Hi there, hope you're well. I've just made this MFT style top with no jigs or templates, just the Festool LR32 guide rail and router. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. Now, I talked in a recent video about Festool's MFT or multi-function table like this one, and far and away the fastest and easiest way to get your hands on an MFT style top is to put your hands in your pockets and buy one. But if you want something different from the standard grid of holes, then making your own may well make sense. There are plenty of jigs and router templates available to do this. I'll link a couple of them up down in the description below. But I'm a big fan of using what you have, and I do have Festool's LR32 rail system. I use mine mostly for drilling 5mm shelf pin holes, but today I'll be using a 20mm router bit and every third hole on the rail to match Festool's MFT grid of 20mm holes on 96mm centres. Now, you don't need to make a jig with this method, but you do need a workpiece that's a little bit oversized, because to start with, I'll be using the router to cut a row of half holes along the top and bottom edges of the workpiece, and then I'll be using those to reference the column of holes. This whole thing is much more complicated to explain than it is to do, so I'm just going to get on and do it, and I'll talk you through it as I go. Now, I want my finished top to be 1200 by 600mm or thereabouts, and this workpiece is around 720 by 1220, so the height's fine, but it's not going to be wide enough, so I've just added in a little section at one end at the left hand side on knockdown fittings so that I can take it off easily afterwards. The actual length isn't crucial, I've just used a piece of whatever I had, but the top and bottom edges do need to be absolutely parallel, and the right hand edge does need to be absolutely square for this to work. Now, I want my top to be 12 holes high, 6 rows high and 12 holes wide. So I've marked that out on a stick on a rod so that I can get it approximately centered, and I'll mark out where I want the column of holes to start. Okay, so we got our first column of holes on the right hand end marked, top and bottom. What we can do then, we get our LR32 rail and a router on its little sled, and we're going to click that on, and then we want to line up the router with that first hole. We've got a little bit of wiggle room in this, it doesn't have to be perfect. There are markings on the base and side of the router that show you where that is. And then we just check that for square, which is pretty good. And now what we're going to do is a bit weird. I need to mark where the underside of this T-slot on the rib hits the edge of the board. It'll all become clear in a minute, I promise you. Alright, so for these first two rows of holes, top and bottom reference holes, you could just butt the rail up against the edge of the board like this and put a clamp on it. That would probably work. What I'm going to do when I use this for the shelf pin holes, I've got a couple of little aluminium discs that I had a friend of mine turn for me. These are 32mm across, and I just pop those in to the end hole. Oops, and screw it down. There's a teensy little bit of play in there, so I'll just butt that up hard against the edge and then lock it, and now we know that's not going to move. And what I want to do now is up at our top edge, I want to get the router on the rail, and I want to choose a hole that's closest to that mark that we put in. And it is actually that one, and that's going to be our starting point. Okay, so that's our first hole, the starting point marked with a pencil. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark every third one, but I'll do that on tape so that it's easy to remove afterwards. And then just with a Sharpie and a little block of wood. I'm going to move this up to the other end of the workshop because the whole thing needs a bit more support and it's easier to do up there. All I need to do now is make sure that we get the cut line right on the edge of this board, and I'm just going to use my little homemade LR32 guides for that. Then we need to do the same on the bottom edge, so we'll spin the rail around and move the stop to the other end. And before we start cutting, I'll just double check that I'm starting at the right mark as the rail's been turned. Yeah, that's right. You've probably figured out where we're going with this. We've got a board that's oversized. We've got perfect set of notches, absolutely in line with our right hand edge. This now becomes our jig, and we just add a couple of rail dogs to our rail. Now we've got the perfect jig. Now, as anyone with a set of rail dogs will tell you, there is a little bit of slop in the bolts that attach these, so all I'm going to do is make sure it's centered and positioned, leave it slightly loose, and then just check for square. With the rail dogs fitted and the router in line with the marks, I can line up the rail with the starting point. And then just tighten it up, nice and snug. Okay, so this is literally the boring part. I'm going to take this slow and steady, and I'll probably fast forward all this, through all this, and I'll see you at the end. Oh God, it's tight in here. With everything done, I can take off the left-hand extension and trim the top down to the finished size. There we have. That's our Festool MFT replacement top. Trim the edges off. I've taken the extension piece off. I suppose we ought to check it for square, didn't we? Otherwise somebody's going to complain. 3, 4 points of contact on a known square. That's my one. Let's try the Mirroc one as well, because we know the lad does. Excellent kit, lovely jubbly. Yeah, so I suppose actually what we could do, as it's actually on an MFT, cool. Snug. It should be like whack-a-mole. You can put them in anywhere you like. Oop, no, there isn't one there. Yeah, okay. Alright. There we are, a complete MFT alike top, but to my own dimensions, all perfectly square. As I said earlier on, this only really makes sense if you need one that's an oddball size, or if you need several that would obviously make the investment worthwhile. And when I say investment, I mean time investment. I'm not suggesting for a second that you go out and buy an LR32 system just to make your own MFT tops. But if you do have an LR32 rails and router, then it's a pretty simple way to go about it. I'll leave it there for this week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up or leave me a comment down below. And as always, thanks so much to my Patreon pals for that amazing support. This is the top from my portable workbench, of course, which is coming along very soon. I'm not sure if it's going to be next week or the one after, as my Patreon supporters will know already. There's a bit more going on behind the scenes about this. Come and join the Patreon party at patreon.com/10minute workshop for additional exclusive content or behind the scenes videos. So do come along and join in and see what we're up to over there. That's it for this week, though. Thanks again for watching. As always, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you next time. Hey there, so this is me coming at you from the future. I'm in kind of vlog mode here. I've got a bit of a confession to make. I did make a bit of a screw up, a bit of a stuff up on when I did the worktop, and I didn't notice it until afterwards. So there is a little bit of a continuity error in the last minute or so of that video. If you watch carefully, you'll spot it, and no, you don't get a prize. But the upshot of it was that I've had to make another actual proper top for my mobile bench, and I've done that. In fact, I've just done it now. I did it in 7 minutes using this system, and that was even pausing to shoot a little bit of extra video. And the reason that I managed to do that was that I kept the strips of half holes that I cut from the top and bottom of the other worktop, and I used those as guides for this one, just taped into place. And with that sort of extra work out of the way, that setup time, what you end up with is, of course, an absolutely perfect MFT top, but literally cut all those holes in 7 minutes. That's extraordinary. That's, you know, £20,000 CNC machine territory to do it that fast. That's amazing. Anyway, I thought I'd just throw that one out there. Thanks again to my Patreon supporters. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.